strange problem a consumer faces. You are penalized for using LPG gas sparingly rather judiciously.
Absolutely.
Imagine you have gone abroad for 6 months. When you return, you find that your LPG connection has been cut. You have to run around, write letters,
huge
produce
problem.
affidavits,
Yes.
and wait for weeks to get back the connection.
Yes.
Why is it so? Why are consumers penalized for no fault of theirs?
Actually,
What should the consumer do?
yes, I think something like 58,000 crores is the subsidy that the government incurs and that the loss in supplying subsidized gas, LPG cooking gas for citizens. And it doesn't make sense to insist that we should finish it within 3 months or 4 months or whatever. And I have this problem perennially because I travel a lot. And I even wrote to the minister, I wrote to the oil companies. I have not had a single reply. But the distributor, he has an argument. He says, if you don't book for 6 months or 1 year, I don't get my commission. I need a high turnover in order to make money from my distribution. So how do you argue with them? So commercial concerns become the priority everywhere.
Can we approach a consumer forum on this?
This I don't know. It's a policy decision actually. And the distributor says the laws are made not by me but by the oil companies. And the oil companies say the government decides how much to import, what price to subsidize, how much to subsidize, etc. So it's a national bigger issue. And I think it's high time we all got together, approached the minister in Delhi and ask him to put pressure on the oil companies to remove this law about not supplying if you have kept a cylinder for more than 6 months.
Will you do this, madam?
I have tried to do it. I keep writing letters and it hasn't worked so far. But one person doing it, it's always a problem. If I had 200 people writing, 2,000 people writing, lakhs and lakhs of people have cooking gas in Bangalore. Why can't 1 lakh people write? It's public. It is public apathy, and one person complaining is considered eccentric. It doesn't have clout. If I had people supporting me, I would love to take this up because it doesn't make sense. I should be rewarded for keeping a cylinder and using it so carefully because the government loses a lot of money on each cylinder.
A short break here. Hi listeners, this is H.S. Balram. You are listening to my talk show Namma Bengaluru this week. Today's guest is Dr. Shakuntala Narasimhan, a consumer protection activist. The show is brought to you by Namma Bengaluru Foundation. Please stay tuned. I will be right back. Hi listeners, welcome back. This is H.S. Balram. You are listening to my talk show Namma Bengaluru this week. We are into the final segment. Today's guest is Dr. Shakuntala Narasimhan, a consumer protection activist. Consumer protection? Huh?
It's okay. Consumer activist.
Consumer rights activist. The show is brought to you by Namma Bengaluru Foundation, an NGO that aims at addressing concerns of Bangaloreans that impact their day-to-day lives through partnership, advocacy and activism. Dr. Shakuntala Narasimhan, you have filed some complaints under the Consumer Protection Act.
Yes.
And won several judgments, significant judgments.
Yes.
Can you describe some of these?
Yes, very briefly. The first thing that comes to my mind is the postal one, which was a precedent-setting judgment. I had posted 3 audio tapes, cassettes, and instead of registering, this went to 3 different addresses. So in order to save money, I didn't register them, but I sent them under certificate of posting, which is only 3 rupees. It used to be 3 rupees for 3 items. But it is proof that I handed over the tapes to the postal staff. And this was some years ago. Now you can't even do certificate of posting. It's been abolished, which is very sad. But I sent this and none of the tapes reached the addressee. They were all, pilfered en route. So I filed a case. And first I was told that you cannot complain because only registered transactions we will keep track, and so you have no grounds. I filed it in spite of that, and the magistrate who heard my complaint at the under the Consumer Protection Act, he decided that she has given proof to say that the cassettes were handed over to the postal staff because I had that certificate. And once she has proved it, you have to prove that it was delivered. And you don't have proof. And I had letters from all three addressees saying that they never got it. And I got compensation, the cost of the tapes, plus the cost of filing the litigation, plus compensation for harassment, loss, anxiety, cost, everything. They paid up, and this appeared in the newspaper also because it was a precedent-setting judgment, in spite of the Indian Postal Act saying that only registered articles can be taken up. That was one. The other thing was, more recently I sued my mobile service provider. Would you like to hear about that?
Yeah, please go
Okay.
ahead. Please go ahead.
I acquired a mobile, and I was still new to it, and it was given to me because my husband was elsewhere, daughter was elsewhere, I have an elderly mother, so for an emergency. So my students who gave it to me as a gift fed 5 numbers into it, and only these 5 numbers were available. And I don't use it to chat, I don't talk unnecessarily. And if the call was from one of these 5 numbers, I would answer. If it was an unknown number, I wouldn't answer. Suddenly one day, my line was barred and cut off. So I went to the service provider and asked what happened, because they had a huge deposit. They said, "Madam, we tried to call you to verify address. Periodically, we are entitled to do this, and you never answered our 3 calls, therefore we barred it." So I got really mad. I said, "This is no way to verify answer. If you want to verify answer, come to my door. I have submitted all the documents, including passport, Xerox and everything, telephone bill, etc. Come to my door and check. You can't just send an SMS, and you can't expect an elderly woman to answer calls and give out her address or verify address to unknown numbers. It is a safety hazard." And I went to court. I claimed compensation. I won my case. And now the court said you have to give her compensation because you have not done right. Under the TRI rules, it says 10% of the cases you can verify address by telephoning. But even in those 10%, the service provider says we have lakhs of customers, which is also true. But if even for 10%, if they don't answer, you can't bar. You have to turn up at their door and then check why they are not answering, or send an SMS, which is what I argued in court. So this is another judgment. What other judgment would you like to know about? I have
Any other judgment